Right now, on this OSF folder, there isn't much. So I'm going to upload this together with you to that OSF folder. So if you're not familiar with OSF, that this is like a first look. I'm guessing that many of you have used this before. I use OSF for everything. Not only do I share my data, not only do I do my pre-registrations, but I also upload my talks and my teaching materials. So it's just a way for me to collaborate with others, whoever they are. So I'm assuming you went in and we're now ready to proceed. So as you can see here, this is our University of Vienna workshop. It's under all the open science talks that I have. So if you want to see the other open science workshops that I have, you can just go in there and have a look at that. You'll see that over here there's a component which I created by going to add component, and then it's here on the right side. So this is what we'll use in order to do the pre-registration. You can see that I've already made everything public, so I don't hide this. Once you make this public, you can create a DOI. It has a little button that says create DOI, and then you can just use this in order to cite this or refer to this in some way. So we'll go to this subcomponent, which is the pre-registration demo. And here you see it's empty. It also has a DOI, so available for everyone. So I already created for us under this. I created a demo. And this demo has a bunch of things. It has Qualtrics that you'll participate in, and I'll show you what this Qualtrics looks like afterwards, after you participate. But you can already see a planned data analysis with simulated code. And in here, you'll see that I prepared a bunch of things. So based on the Qualtrics, I created some simulated participants. Actually, I can maybe show this to you right now. If I go to my Qualtrics account, and then not many people use this function for some reason, but if you'll go on the Qualtrics, you'll see that there's a very easy way to just simulate some participants. So whatever the data, the survey flow is, so you'll see that there's like a consent form and there's like a bunch of other things that come afterwards regarding open science practices. But if we go here on tools, and we go to generate test responses, then you have an ability to very fast create, I don't know, like 100 participants. And then once this is generated, then I go to data and analysis. And in the data analysis, I just download a file in an SPSS format, which is the safest one, because the CSV one gets distorted if you have a comma or a tab, and the Excel one sometimes shifts the numbers from numbers to dates and all kinds. SPSS format is now open, and now everybody knows how to use this. You can use Jamovi and R in order to create some to import this and create some analysis based on that. You can see over here, and I have both an OMV file based on the simulated responses. So this is the SPSS SAV file. This is the Jamovi OMV file. And then I also have some R Markdown code. And based on this, I knitted the files in order to combine text and code. I'll show you this soon. But all of this together is what I'm going to upload as my pre-registration. In addition, I also have a regular document file. I won't expose the hypotheses yet, but in order to show you what it is that's in there, this is just a regular file which has all my pre-registrations. It's very, very basic because many of the things are in the R Markdown file. But just to show you that there is a document, there is simulated data, and there is two ways to analyze this, one with Jamovi and one with R Markdown. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go here, and I'm going to create this folder on the OSF, and this folder is going to be a pre-registration. So once this is created, I'm just going to drag over the files that I think are important for this. So for example, these ones, and I'm going to drag this over to the pre-registration folder. And it takes a while, but it uploads fairly fast. And once this is uploaded, everything is done. Then I can look at those files if I want to. Once it's already here, then I'm ready to do the registration. So this is just to show you that once I upload it, this is what it looks like. It converts even Word documents into a PDF, and then other people can use this URL in order to go and see these files. So once these files are uploaded and they are in the system, then we're ready to do the pre-registration. So in the pre-registration, there is this tab here called Registrations. So I'll just go to this Registrations tab. Right now, it's empty, so we can create a new registration. And here we have all the kinds of templates on how to do pre-registrations. And what's nice about these things is that they give you fields, and you need to do what is the power analysis and the expected sample size, what are your hypotheses, and how are you going to analyze this. But because I've already included all of that information in my documents or in the R Markdown file, then I'm going to use the one that is the least complicated, which is called open-ended registration. I create this draft here, and then it gives me this interface saying what's happening, what is the description for this. So then basically what I say is all materials, survey, and data analysis and code are in the pre-registration folder. That's it. So that's the only thing I include here. If I want, I can also add a license here. Then I decide which one of the things are here, and then I'm doing like a demo. So I add some fields, and then I go into view. I just copy and paste here. And then if I want, I can select the key files that are in here. So for example, the most important one is this document. Then if I want the R Markdown, then I choose the R Markdown or the HTML that comes out of that. And then it includes some of the files in the pre-registration. But in general, what open-ended pre-registration does is that it takes all of the folder, everything that is in your files, and it creates a frozen version of that. So what this does right here is that it highlights up to 5 files of that folder, but everything that is in your project is already going to be frozen and untouchable after you pre-register. There was a question, you wanted to ask something?
Yes, one question which I often see reoccurring is about the license. Do you have an opinion on this?
I use the CC BY. Some people are a bit more restrictive about this. I see no reason to restrict anybody from using it, so as long as they mention cite me in some way, then I'm already happy. Some people would like to be a little bit more restrictive, so they don't want any commercial applications of this, so you can restrict this even further. But my default is CC BY. I think we can do like a whole workshop on what are the rights and how to manage this, but I think CC BY already is an academic. It's kind of what we do. We do foundation research that is supposed to inspire a lot of things, including commercial aspects. So if somebody has some application for that for my research, I'm already very happy, as long as, of course, they mention that they base their research on mine. But you can restrict this in any way that's comfortable for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, good. So what we're going to do here is that I'm just going to go ahead and review this. And once I see that everything is comfortable for me, I do need a license though. So I cannot leave this flag. So CC BY is already good enough. So I'll go back, I'll review, and then here it allows me to go ahead and to register. So you have two options here. If you're sensitive about sharing the pre-registration, you don't want others to know about your project, you can choose an embargo up to 4 years. So you can say for the next 4 years, I don't want this to happen public. So you can decide until when you want this to happen. But I share all my registrations publicly immediately. I feel it's important that the community knows what I'm doing, and if anybody wants to join this, then they're very happy to. I'm very happy for them to join, and for us to be a collaboration. Then what happens is that it archives stuff, and after it archives everything, it figures everything up. It sends me an email, and in this email it asks me, would you approve this or would you decline this? So if there's more than one author, then sometimes it asks multiple authors to approve this before it's completely pre-registered. So it depends on who is listed as an admin for that project. Because here it's only me, then I'm going to use my mobile in order to approve this registration. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this, and then you'll see what happens when this is approved. So this is registered. So if I'll just refresh this, you'll see that in the pre-registration here, it says everything. It has the 2 highlighted files that I have. It has this, all materials are in the pre-registration folder. Sometimes reviewers look at this and they say, but we don't see any files. Where are the files? So actually go here on the files, you'll see there's an archive on our folder, and all these are frozen. They cannot be touched anymore. And in the pre-registration folder, you'll see all the files that we uploaded. If I want to link to this pre-registration, so I always want these to be tied together, then I go on link projects, then I go to our registration, and then I'll see my registration available here, and then I'll just add this as a subcomponent of this, and you'll see that here it's registered, it has the dates and everything. And another nice feature is that it also appears here as an archive of the OSS folder. So whatever you do here, all this is changeable, but the stuff from the register component appears over here on the bottom. So you can see all of these files here. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a pre-registration. Then in my document, I can go ahead and use this in order to, so I can go back to the overview, and over here you see that I have a DOI. So I take this DOI and I just put this in my manuscript to say, this is pre-registered and this is frozen. You can go and check my pre-registration. So now that we have this, now I'm going to ask you to participate in this survey. It's a very short survey, and it asks you about 3 different practices. One is a pre-registration, second one is register reports, and the third one is data sharing. And because I'm a decision-making scholar, then this has a little bit of manipulation, but because this is a within subject design, you'll see all 3 conditions. But finally, there's only 9 questions. They're very quick, so you can go through these. So scan this QR code, or go to this link over here, and answer the call checks. And once you're done, maybe just like raise your hand or just tell me in some way that you're finished with this. If you have any questions so far, you can just put this in the chat or just go on the microphone and let me know while other people are working. So typically, like in a classroom, it's much easier to also discuss the design and what's happening here and all of that. But I think you can tell already you're very experienced researchers, and it's very easy from within subject design to see what this is about. So obviously, it's about open science practices and how defaults and social norms affect our endorsement of willingness to participate in some of these practices. So I'll walk you through the qualtrics just so you can see the design together with me. So this is our qualtrics, going back to this. If I go on the survey flow, you'll see that there's the consent form, the first block, and then there's a randomizer that randomizes between a group that has two blocks. In this block, I first present the block about pre-registration and then register reports. So it's very important to me that register reports appear after pre-registration. One of the reasons why I do this is because a lot of people confuse pre-registrations and register reports. So I want them to first see pre-registrations and then read about register report and the thing about the publication system. And then this block is randomized with another block called data sharing. So everybody answers 3 blocks, and within each block there is a manipulation. And the manipulation is, we take for example the pre-registration one, is that we're first presenting a condition that is the neutral condition. So there are no norms and no defaults regarding the endorsement of open science. But once you have that, there is a randomizer here that sometimes shows, so then there's 2 blocks, sometimes shows the default for no, and sometimes shows the default for yes in randomized order. So one of them is going to be first. So the very first in each block is the neutral one, and then it's randomized whether the endorsement, whether the default is yes or no. So overall, we have 9 different conditions, and in these 9, I'm trying to understand whether for the 3 open science practices, people will shift the way that they will endorse or are willing to do this practice depending on the social norms. So now that we have all of this data, we're only a very limited number of participants, but I think it's also like a good exercise. So you'll see how I do these kind of things. So if I go to the data and analysis, and I'll wait for this to come in. So we have like 6 connected responses. It takes a while for this to show up, but I'll already download it to my library here. So I'll go to export. As I said, I see a lot of issues with my students getting messed up data with CSV and Excel. This is why we use the SPSS one. If you want, you can do a bunch of things here. So typically I also export the viewing order, so the presentation order, just so I have this with me. Then I can download the data, and I'll download these to the same directory as I did before. Afterwards, I'll also upload this to the OSF. And now I have this, and I'll call this real data. I'll replace this. And then I'll just, to give you a look on what this feels like. So real data is here, it's modified first. So I'll just tell you that for quick looks, when I just want to have a general understanding of what this looks like, actually I don't have SPSS installed. Instead I have something called PSPP, which is an open source clone of SPSS. It doesn't cost anything, you don't need a license, and it runs a lot of the SPSS code. So if you have some students that are obsessed with SPSS or faculty, you can also transform them to using this clone, just for them to be easier for them to have a look at this. So you'll see that we have neutral pre-registration, yes pre-registration, no pre-registration, and then register reports and then sharing. If we just do that, then we'll go on the real data RMD, which is my R Markdown code, and then I'll show you what it is that I plan to do with this. And what's nice about this is that once I have the real data, because I pre-registered this R Markdown code, the only thing that I need to do is to direct it to the new file, which is real data. This is what it looks like. So you can see I pre-registered. This is based on something that I wrote in last year. If you're not familiar with what R Markdown is, it just has a bunch of R chunks. But then in addition, it also has text. And you can go through the headings. For example, this is heading 1, this is heading 2. And here on the right, where you have outline, you can jump through these different headings. You see that it has a little bit of text, but it also has these chunks of code. If you want to see what this would look like at the end, you can also shift from source to visual. So visual actually shows you a little bit of what it would look like at the end. So if you're not sure what heading looks like, so this is what a heading would look like, and then it has the chunk. And then if we go here to the source, you'll see that eventually what this does is that it just loads a bunch of packages, and then it loads the data, which is real data. So I can actually run this chunk of code, run current chunk, to see that it does what it is that it's supposed to do. And then I can go chunk by chunk and run those things, either through here, or I can say run all the chunks below or above. Finally, what I want to do is I want to export this into a knitted file, which has the combination of the text and the code with this knit function over here. So I'm going to knit this to something called read the down, which is like just a nicer formatting. So I'm going to press this. So now it knits all right. And then at the end, you'll see that has all the headings that we showed before. Now you can see all the different datas. I'll just go right down to the bottom here. So basically here we have the no condition, we have the yes condition, we have the neutral condition. So we can see that none and yes, all of you have chosen yes before this. So this is why we have not been able to do some analysis. But when the defaults are for no, then suddenly some of you said maybe I won't do this. Because we're a very small sample, I don't expect any of this to be significant, but you can already see the default has a little bit of an impact. So the comparison between the default none and yes, there's just basically no differences between those, but there is some difference between the yes and no, so you can see, but it's not because we're a very small sample. But this is already to show you how the pre-registration is done and how immediately I turn everything from the data that we collected, I plug it into our Markdown, and I produce the results. So this gives us already kind of like a general understanding of we pre-registered something, we uploaded this to the OSF, we timestamped it, then we collected some data, then we downloaded the data, and then we ran the analysis, and now we can compare this to what the simulated data looked like. So I'll just show you what the simulated data looked without. So I just simulated some data, and at the end, what this looked like is that the simulated data, because it's all random noise, this is what it looked like. It was somewhere in between 0 and 1, 0.5, and of course none of this is significant. But basically, I pre-registered all of these analysis before based on the simulated data. So when I load this, so you can see the code here, yeah. So here I just uploaded, inserted into the Markdown the simulated data. So now I can compare what the HTML for the simulated data looks like compared to the HTML of the real data, and then I can say these are the differences, and this is what I found according to the same pre-registration plan. So if we just go back to what the hypotheses were, so in fact the pre-registration that I wrote is very, very simple because a lot of it is already in the R Markdown code. So if we go here, it looks a little bit like a manuscript. It has an abstract, but because it was simulated data and it did not have any data, then I did not know if we were going to find support or fail to find support. And then finally here I had a table of hypotheses. So for here you can see that I hypothesized that those in the open sciences default, in this case pre-registration and register reports and data sharing and perceived norms, will indicate higher endorsement of open science practices compared to the no default, and then the no compared to the control condition, and so forth. So this already gives you a general idea. We also have these tables that are trying to show the different conditions and the different practices and the different conditions. And then a little bit about the procedure, a little bit about the participants. I didn't know how many we have, so I just left this open. Then I write a little bit about the manipulations. I write a bit about the measures. So it's just basically a yes and a no. And finally, in the results here, I just indicate, please have a look at my R Markdown. So this is like the simplest pre-registration possible to do something very, very quickly as a demonstration. Now, I'll just say one more thing. If you're using Jamovi, some people are not comfortable with R or R Markdown. If you're more comfortable with Jamovi, actually what Jamovi has is something called Jamovi templates. So if we look at our simulated data, if we just open the OMV file that I uploaded to the OSF, all right, so you can see the Jamovi here. You can see that I pre-registered all these different analyses, so exactly the same, everything is around 0.5. Now, if you do this, you have something called export, and then you can, just a second, I'll just hide this. Here you have something called a Jamovi template, so you can export a Jamovi template, and what a Jamovi template looks like is that at the end you'll have something that looks like this, so you can open this template. Just give me a sec. I'll just direct it to the template, this OMT file, and you'll see that it has exactly the same thing as this, only it doesn't have any data in it. It's just a template, but it also has all of these analyses on the right. So basically what I can do now is that I can just import, special import. I can go in and I can import my real data, and hopefully it will just run all the analysis based on that. So you can see it plugged these things here, and already automatically it starts to calculate a bunch of stuff, and then hopefully it will show us all the results. So even if you don't know R Markdown and you want to have some kind of a template, it's already producing a lot of stuff. So first you conduct all of your analysis on Jamovi, then you export export this as a template. Then after the pre-registration, you just special import into the template. And you can see exactly the same thing that we did with R Markdown. It's done with Jamovi, because these Jamovi templates are amazing. I think both with R Markdown and with Jamovi templates and with the Qualtrics generate responses, a lot of people somehow don't know about these very powerful features. So if you have students and you don't want to train them, it's too complicated to do R Markdown, they can definitely follow these steps. They're very, very easy to do. Then what I usually do, if they're not familiar with R Markdown, then I do this follow-up step to show them that actually Jamovi is R Markdown. So basically I can push this syntax node over here, and then all the code that I created in my R Markdown is actually R code that I copy-pasted from here. So once you set up things in Jamovi, to move to R Markdown is like 3 clicks. It's like put the syntax on, copy, then paste this into the R Markdown code, and that's it. So that's how I can create all the stuff that you saw with the R Markdown. I created in like, I don't know, less than 5 minutes. All this is because Jamovi is built on R, has the R syntax. So if people are familiar with SPSS, moving to Jamovi is very, very simple. A bunch of clicks, create everything, then copy the R code into your R Markdown, and then everything is ready. In R Markdown, the only thing that's a little bit more tricky is that you just need to load the right file and make sure that everything translates well. All the stuff that you saw that I had to comment out is because when you import just the syntax from Jamovi into the R Markdown, it doesn't take care of all kinds of things like cleaning. So if you don't have some values like 0, it just doesn't show up. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of a demonstration on, first, for you to see if you're familiar with all these things with R Markdown and Jamovi, how to do a pre-registration, but also how you can use this in order to educate some of the people in your lab or some of the students that you're working with on how to do this well. So I just want to show you in some of the other workshops that I've done. So the first one that I did in 2020 actually was not within subject design, it was between subject design. And already you can see that some people are shifting the way that they answer this, so that when the default is to not do open science, suddenly some people are starting to say, even if I'm attending an open science workshop, if my university doesn't do open science, then I'm not going to do open science. And this was both for sharing and for pre-registration. And then I started doing this in my courses. So here you can see this is already within subject design, and indeed the effects are very strong here. Typically people say at HKU, yeah, if there's no default, I'm happy to do open science. If there's a default for yes, of course I will do open science. But the default, unfortunately, in the social norms at HKU is not to do open science. So that explains why so few of our students do any of these open science practices, even data sharing, which is something very basic. I also ran 2 workshops with education, so you can see very similar results to my classes. So you can see the effects are very, very strong. So like eta square of 0.24 is a strong effect for this. And if we're looking at this here, so even adjusted p-values, even within subject design, with only 20 participants, you can already see the effects are very, very strong. So as a judgment decision-making scholar, I advocate for use the right default. So if you can convince your university or your department or in your lab to just even say, I don't have any opinion. If you want, you can do this. That's already better than just saying, okay, please follow the normals. Nobody's doing any of the open science. But if you can set the default to be yes, like I'm trying to do in my lab and with my collaborators, then there's a high likelihood that many will just move fully to doing all these open science practices. So this is just very briefly on pre-registration. I think by now it's endorsed by many of the journals. It's now expected. And if you do confirmatory quantitative analysis, that it will, that you'll pre-register everything before you collect the data, and then you'll be able to demonstrate this effectively to their reviewers. A lot of discussion in the community about what are the benefits and the downsides of pre-registration. Some of the people are trying to do randomized control trials to show the benefits of pre-registrations. I would generally say that it's very it's a good practice, but it's overhyped. So I think we think pre-registration sometimes might solve all of our problems, but pre-registration really is dependent on whether you do it well. And a lot of people sometimes just do pre-registration for the sake of saying that they've conducted this. So it's up to us to really open up and look at the pre-registration and have some way of comparing what people said that they will do, what people actually did. Many times, researchers leave themselves a lot of room for flexibility. And I think the way to ensure that there is no flexibility is by just including all of your simulated data and code. So that way it's really clear for you, for the reviewers, for the community, what are the analyses that you pre-registered and how they align with your hypothesis. So this is from the Open Science Framework and several Open Science pages about the benefits and downsides of pre-registration. So it does show some credibility. I think it's mostly about transparency and openness. So you want to be able to show, not just to others, but also for yourself, what is it that you thought in advance and you predicted in advance compared to what it is that you ended up doing. So if you added an analysis, so in this case, for example, I commented out code. So I need to explain why I commented out this code and why this this was needed. So all the differences between what I planned to do and what it is that I did just adds a little bit of information for the reviewers to assess what it is that I did. And if there are some deviations, then I need to justify them. So the way that typically people talk about pre-registration is that if you want to do confirmatory hypothesis or conformity analysis, then you have to pre-register them in advance, including saying things like what is going to be the sample size and what are going to be the analyses and what is your alpha and how you compensate for all kinds of things, how you do outliers, how you do exclusion, all these kinds of things. But some people feel like maybe this is confounding them in some way, maybe this is restricting them, maybe they only have to follow the pre-registration and they can't do anything else. And this is a misconception. I think it's written here about possible concerns. So people are saying that perhaps doing a pre-registration just means that they have to follow strictly what it is that they did in the research design. It really does not. You can explore and do whatever other analysis you want after the data collection. The only thing that you need to explain is that this was not registered, this is a deviation. The reason why you added those is because we had additional things, and then you categorize these as exploratory rather than confirmatory. So you don't claim that you hypothesized this in advance, just say this happened after I looked at the data. And then people can follow up on your exploratory analysis and hypothesis with another confirmatory study. In addition to this, definitely reduces some bias. It helps address your own bias. So I very quickly forget I'm involved in way too many projects, and then when I come back to a project after 2-3 months, sometimes I forget. So what is it that I did? What is it that I thought it's gonna happen? So even when I go back to some of my documents, it's not very clear to me which document at what point in time did I have what hypothesis. But a pre-registration just makes this very clearly because I have a public timestamp where I hold myself accountable, and then I can go and see, okay, so on that date, this is what I thought, and this was my best understanding of the analysis, of the methods, of the hypothesis, and so forth. So it's transparency for yourself and for the community, holding yourself accountable so that you don't fool yourself. Some people are worried about grouping. They say, if I share everything publicly, then somebody's going to my idea. I've never seen this, not just for myself, I've never seen this with anybody that I know. If anything, when there were debates about who got there first, having a public pre-registration with a timestamp allowed people to say, here is a public pre-registration saying that I had this idea first. Therefore, let's work together, let's collaborate, let's join forces. So I really like this thing about making everything public, because if other people are doing something similar, then they might be informed of this, and then they can go and see that you've done this. They can get some inspiration from this. Maybe they can cite you, maybe they can reach out to you. And most of the times where I did things publicly, people communicated to me, reached out to me, and then said, we're actually doing a very similar thing. We saw your pre-registration. Can we join this initiative? And for me, I'm always happy to collaborate. I don't need to do anything on my own. So whenever somebody else wants to come in, step in, or even take over some of the stuff that we've done, I'm very happy for them to go ahead and do this. And if there's something that I can contribute, or something that is in my pre-registration, then I'm happy to do these things together. So all these potential concerns about scooping, about strictly adhering to the research design, all these I think are just misconceptions. Some people, and I think this is especially early career researchers, are afraid of other people being able to see their mistakes. Some say, my pre-registration is not good enough, so I don't want others to see my gains or my bad code. But actually for me, I want others to see what it is that I'm doing, because many times they help me improve. So if I did a mistake, definitely I want to catch this as early as possible. So I have on my website, I have a pledge where I invite people and I pay people to come in and find mistakes in my work, and I want to find them as early as possible. So I don't want 20 years into the future when this is already published and has 200 citations, only then to find that I did a mistake and all this waste of resources. I want to know this as soon as possible. So not only do I not fear criticism, I invite, welcome, and motivate, incentivize criticism. So I think opening everything up is just a win-win for everybody. Time constraint is something that we're going to talk about a little bit when we get to the registry reports and stuff. If you want like a good guide on this, I saw a recent preprint. So Charlotte here also wrote a terrific book about open science practices for students and early career researchers, and she also has one for pre-registration. So go and check that out. Some people said, me as a reviewer, when I get a link to a pre-registration, it's very time consuming for me to go over this in order to compare what a pre-registration did and what they actually have done in the study. So now it's very impressive that using technology of AI, ChatGPT, and so forth, they've trained a model called RegCheck for you to upload a pre-registration plan and upload the final manuscript, and it's actually able to catch some deviation. So it checks whether things deviated. So I uploaded a few of mine. For example, if we pre-registered that we're going to collect 500 participants, and because Prolific went a little bit beyond and had 502, so RegCheck was able to look at our pre-registration and look at the final and say, actually, you pre-registered 500, but you had 502. Did you justify this? So whenever we have these kinds of deviations, we include like a note, but because of the way Prolific does the recruitment, sometimes it goes beyond 500, but it's very important that tools like that automate the checking to help reviewers and sometimes help us. So for example, when I review what my students do or what my collaborators do, then I want a way to help me save a little bit of time. So do check that out. It's a recent tool that came out by this Aero team from Bern. They do a really good job. So just to conclude this section, this took a little bit longer than I expected, but maybe that's like a good setup for the register reports. We have like 3 hours together, so at least we get this done. We know that we have the same solid foundations on this. So this was a demonstration of a pre-registration. It's not a very good one, so you're going to see much better ones because we've moved to doing register reports. Now we're going to discuss how to do this better, and not just as a pre-registration, but also as something that goes beyond that, which is a pre-registration that goes to expert peer review. So briefly, I'm going to talk through the challenges. These slides come from Chris Chambers and Ryan Osek and a bunch of publications regarding the challenges in science and why we need pre-registration or what register reports are meant to solve. So I'm very briefly going to go over this. I think we feel this every day in our scientific work, is that we need to get hired. We need to get promoted. So just getting into a PhD program is already so demanding. In publications, getting into a postdoc, you need even more so, assistant professor even more so. And this creates a real conflict. Also for me, when I'm applying for tenure and whether to get promoted or not, I need to demonstrate that I've published, and I've published well in a top-tier journal, which for many other universities just is the impact factor, how high of an impact factor. And basically, a lot of these high impact factor journals look for outstanding results, which for them is typically p-value lower than 0.05 or an alpha, and novel, groundbreaking, counterintuitive kind of results. So a lot of the assessment of whether something is going to get published in a top-tier journal is about the results. So what's best for scientists, for us to get hired, for us to get promoted, for us to get funding, is to produce a lot of great results, but science should not be based on whether the results are great p-value lower than 0.05, but rather regarding the rigor, about the credibility, the transparency, high-quality research studies published regardless of the outcome. So we've got this conflict between these two incentives. So there's this paradox that the part of the study that should not be under your control, that you should just document because you're observing reality is the results, but the stuff that it matters the most for us for advancing our careers is the results. So don't touch the results, but make sure that the results are amazing. And this creates all kinds of bad practices. Now we call them questionable research practices or p-hacking, a bunch of other stuff. So on one side, we've got all the current incentives about chasing the metrics, all these impact factors, and they emphasize interest, novelty, innovation, groundbreaking, so forth, stuff that we can tell the media about. But then there's us, the trained researchers, and we really want to strive for knowledge. So we care about replications and error detection and doing collaborations and diversity and all this. But we can't struggle with these incentives because if we go against these incentives, we're going to get kicked out of the system. So this is where we really need to assess why is this happening. And one of the big problems is this traditional broken publishing model that is based on something centuries old of how scientific publishing came to be. So basically the way that we do this with traditional journals is that we develop the idea, we design the study, we collect and analyze the data, and then we write the report. And only once we have all of this, then with the data, everything analyzed, and the final report and our conclusions, then we submit this to peer review. And this creates a lot of issues. It means that only once you have the results, you're going to get evaluated. The reviewers and the editors see the results, and then they make assessments of whether this is worthy enough based on the results. And because I'm a judgment decision-making scholar, then I'm very familiar with some of these outcome-based biases. So there's outcome bias, hindsight bias, which lead to publication bias. So when people do not like the results, for example, not counterintuitive enough, not groundbreaking enough, not significant enough, then people tend to reject this. Or if you have camps, and the two camps believe in different things, if you see somebody with results that do not support your camp but support the other camp, then you say reject. So there's a lot of in-group, out-group in terms of camps. Sometimes there's a lot of things outcome related that lead us to evaluate things. So for example, replications, whether it's successful or unsuccessful. So based on your own beliefs, if some things do not adhere to your beliefs, if you think that this should fail but it succeeded, or if you think it should succeed and fail, then just reject. So just seeing the outcome creates all kinds of different issues. Another issue is that if you only submit to peer review once you have collected everything, and data is already there, then it's a big waste if this gets rejected or if this is not published at the end. So the only thing that the reviewers can really say is that you have made a mistake, you did not do the methods well, the research question is not worthy enough, but you've already collected that data, you've invested 1 or 2 years of your life into this research question, so it just creates a lot of waste. If you're rejected, there's not much that you can do in order to correct this aside from collect data again and start the whole life cycle again. In addition, a lot of our top journals, what we consider to be our most reputable, the highest impact factors, are very high on rejection rates. So we can see that a lot of these things get rejected based on the outcome. So it's a big waste if like 95% of the stuff that's submitted to psychological science or JPSP or whatever your field is, what happens to these 95% that get rejected? Either they go to the next journal and then it might get rejected again, and then another journal and get rejected. It could take 3-4 years until something is published. And if it's not published at the end, where does it go? It goes into the file drawer. So this creates a big publication bias, it creates a lot of waste, and it creates a skewed understanding of what's actually happening in our field. So we have a lot of these threats to the scientific method. So if we look at the entire life cycle here, from generating the hypothesis to designing the study, conducting the study, collecting the data, analyzing the data, integrating everything, in each step of the way, we have a lot of biases because of this broken traditional publication model. And in addition, because of the incentives that we have, many things go wrong. So for example, all these questionable research practices or this harking, so claiming that something is hypothesized when it's only seen after the results are known. Lack of replications, so the estimates are that somewhere between 0.5 to 2% of the publications are replications, and this is just impossible. Just imagine, all these studies from the 1970s on a sample of 30 from Princeton. How do we know that they work somewhere else? How do we know that 50 years later they still hold? How do we know that we don't have some kind of a problem? Maybe it was a false positive, maybe they did something wrong. Because we don't share, because we don't revisit, we don't reassess, then we don't actually know whether this holds true or not, but we keep doing lots of TED Talks and we keep doing a lot of books and writing all kinds of things about that. So just based on these studies from the 1970s and a small sample from Princeton does not mean that it's going to keep going forever, but because of this novelty, counterintuitive, groundbreaking obsession that we have in top-tier journals, then we have a big problem with all of those. So looking at all this life cycle, we suddenly realize, oh my gosh, this is a big issue that we need to address. So pre-registration already solves some of these things. So for example, you can hold yourself more accountable so that you can prevent harking. So it's much easier to see whether somebody harked when you compare things to a pre-registration. But you can add additional remedies, so we can address these things in the results and whether there's harking or no harking. But in every step of the way, we can add additional measures in order to try and address some of these issues by doing things on preprints or, for example, doing team collaborative open science, having more transparency. And then going back to try and understand what are our sins, what are our biases, and how we can try and address them. So in 2015, Chris Chambers came out with this terrific book. I really recommend this. I give this to all my students, 7 Deadly Sins of Psychology. By now we already know that this is not just a psychology problem, this is a science problem, because we've seen failed replications on a mass scale on cancer biology, and then we have this in other fields, some of them even computational. So we need to address these outcome bias, confirmation bias, publication bias, hunting bias, and so forth. Just to understand how impact factors are valued over pre-registrations or registered reports. For example, I ran this survey on Twitter asking in your department if you have 2 candidates and they're exactly the same with a number of publications and similar qualifications, but one publishes very high impact factors and one publishes registered reports, which one would you prefer? And you can see a very strong bias towards the impact factors, definitely the case with HKU, my university. Registered reports are just not valued at all. So if you have high impact factor, no pre-registration or registered report, and then you have registered report, but a lot lower impact factor, and it's very clear what the difference is. Then I also asked how about the impact factor compared to the top factor, which is transparency and openness. So how much you've shared the data and all of that. You can see a very similar rates. So this bias really exists. So even though registered reports and pre-registrations have been there for quite some time, still there is a lot of, even in the open science scholars that follow me on Twitter, you can see that the way that they reflect their departments is that definitely we still have this obsession with impact factors in the way that they evaluate things. So let's say that we want to improve on this traditional model, then what can we do? And my claim is, and I go around the world trying to advocate for this, is that registered reports are the future of science and what we need to do in order to address these things. So we should not care about the outcome. Outcome should be irrelevant for us. It should be hidden from us. is the research question, and what is the quality of the methods that we use in order to address this research question, not anything about the results. And this is based on the principle by Richard Feynman about the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool. So a pre-registration already takes the first step in holding yourself accountable by doing a public timestamp, but there's an additional step that we can take in order to really focus only on the question, only on the quality, and completely taking away all the evaluation of the results. So in 2013, Christian, an editor in Cortex, which is, I'm told by my neuro colleagues, is a reputable journal in neuropsychology, neuroscience, and was asked to be an associate editor and refused because he thought that this traditional model is broken. And then for the first time he was given the chance to just come up with whatever kind of initiative he wants to, and then he introduced this new publishing initiative in Cortex. And basically what he was saying is that we're going to have two stages of the peer review process. Rather than just doing this at the end, which is, we already know is broken, we're going to decide on everything before the data collection, just doing a pre-registration. But instead of you doing your pre-registration by yourself, you submit this to expert peer review. And then the peer reviewers make an assessment of research question, how good is it, and then how do the hypotheses and the methods follow up from that. And then if they see something that is wrong, even a mistake or a suggestion to improve, they can just give you some constructive, positive feedback. And then as an author, you can work on this in order to improve this. And then at the end, there should be an agreement between the author, the reviewers, and the editor that this is the best possible way to test the research question. Once everybody agrees on this, the real revolution of a registered report is that it gives you an in-principle acceptance based on the pre-registration plan, saying that no matter what happens, it doesn't matter if the p-value is above or below 0.05, if this is a failed replication or successful, this is going to get published, thereby eliminating all the biases that have to do with the outcome. So the way that this looks is that in the first stage, that is done only on the pre-registration, developing an idea and designing the study, the reviewers are asked, are the hypotheses well-founded? Do they relate to an interesting research question? Are the methods and the proposed analysis feasible and sufficiently detailed? They can assess things like power. So for example here, they aim for 90. In most of the collaborations that I do, we aim for 95. So those which try even higher for 99. So as a field, we're moving to better powered samples, but also ensuring that the design is good enough. The design is appropriate in order to test this research question. And then, are there enough positive controls? Do we know exactly what's going to happen in every step? Do we know what the analyses are? Do we know what the exclusions, the outliers, what is the method to deal with all kinds of things in order to make sure that when the data does come in, we know exactly how to address it. Then once everything is agreed on, then at stage one, you get an in-principle acceptance, and only then you proceed to do the data collection and the analysis. Then, based on that, you write the report, and then you submit this to a stage 2 peer review. In stage 2 peer review, the reviewers don't come up with new issues. So most of the things are focused on what it is that everybody agreed on stage 1 peer review. So have you followed the plan? If you have not followed the plan or added something to it, why did you do this? What did this add? And try to justify this, explain to us why this is needed and how does this affect the conclusion. Whether positive controls, did they work? And then finally, if you have a discussion, whether the discussion conclusions are justified by the data. Are you cautious enough? Are you humble enough? This is the only thing. So you don't need to be afraid that suddenly somebody is going to come up and say, oh, we found this a new issue, you should have done this in advance. That's not possible because there is an in-principle acceptance for that. So from this traditional model with a lot of broken aspects, now we come to this green picture of registered reports where there's no publication bias and eliminates a lot of issues like p-hacking and harking, and ensures that there is all controls and well enough powered sample. It incentivizes and allows for things like replications and ensures high transparency and openness about each and every step of the way. So there's now this question that people tend to ask at this point in time of, now that we understand what registered reports are, how do we really know that they're working as intended? Do they really reduce the publication bias? How do we know? So we have some indicators. We're still in the process of running these randomized control trials and comparing standard reports to registered reports. It's a little bit difficult because you can't randomize people to either doing this or that, but you can do some things with indicators that are a little bit indirect. So for example here, this team tried to compare standard reports to registered reports and using meta-scientific evidence in order to see how many of their hypotheses are supported. So for example, in standard reports, they had a sample of 152, 95% of those had their p-value lower than 0.05 or hypothesis supported. What happens when you move to registered reports? So here you'll see that suddenly the rate of finding support p-value lower than 0.05 drops to lower than 50%. In addition, they ran this blinded reviews of manuscripts that are either registered reports or traditional reports. And they didn't tell the reviewers which one is which. They just asked them, please assess the method's rigor, the quality of the method, the analysis rigor, and overall quality of the paper. And what you can see here is that in the comparison between the registered reports and the traditional model articles, it seems like overall people just evaluate registered reports to be of higher quality, both in terms of methods rigor, the analysis rigor, but also in the overall quality of the paper. So that is already, to me, very, very encouraging. And there's also additional things that are currently happening that seem to show positive direction. From my experience, both as a reviewer, as an author, I can definitely say that registered reports represent the best work that I've ever found. And as a reviewer, the registered reports that I see are of much higher quality, rigor, and transparency than any of the other traditional things that I've reviewed. So both as an author and a reviewer, I'm much happier with registered reports than I am with traditional ones. This is the baseline pyramid here is by Chris Chambers. This is something that I definitely believe in. I try to also educate my students on this. So if, let's say I'm a news reporter, or I'm a practitioner, I'm a student, I'm a stakeholder, and I need to consume science, and I want to know what works. Right now, the status quo research that does not have a pre-registration, does not have open data sharing, I think is barely worth a mention. I would see this as something anecdotal. We really need to move up the pyramid, the hierarchy, in order to assess credibility. So if we add some kind of open data and materials, that already increases that a little bit. If you have a pre-registration, that makes it confirmatory open science, that is a little bit greener. But finally, the only one that really gets closer to the green, because it controls many of these biases, are these registered reports. And we need enough of those. We need also replications, independent replications, and so forth. So finally, the top of the pyramid is a meta-analysis of all these registered reports over time, over 5-10 years. And I think now, because we're doing more and more of these, I think in like 5-10 years we'll have more of these meta-analyses of registered reports that are doing pre-registrations and are doing data and materials archives, so sharing everything in the process. I also tend to think, and we have templates and projects on this, that meta-analyses need to be a registered report. So I'm hoping to see more and more of this happening. And finally, at the end, this is end of days, I hope we'll get there at some point, that meta-analysis, instead of being conducted every 5 or 10 years or even longer than this, then we need meta-analysis that can just check on the latest registered report on some topic and then be automatically, continuously updated throughout the time. So this is my hierarchy of a vision for the future. So now we get to a little bit more of a practical side. I want to show you what a registered report looks like. So as a first step, I thought maybe I'll show you what I do with my students and how we work together on these things based on some templates. So over time, I started with a very basic template, and then every time that something came up with one of the manuscripts, then I added an additional thing. So now all of my students and some of the team that I work with follow this template in order to create the stage 1 registered report manuscript. So I'll just show you the different sections and what that looks like. So so you can follow these links over here. So it's basically like my website, ngto.org, /r manuscript template, and then all this appears on my website. So if later you can either download the slides or then find it through my website. So I opened this already, and this is what it looks like. So you've got the template, and there's, hold on. So it looks just like a manuscript. So the way that I do registered reports is that I basically write the stage 1 as if this is a full manuscript. I even include a results section based on simulated data. So everything that I'm going to show you is going to look very familiar. You can even use this template not for a registered report, but you can use this as something for a typical manuscript that you write. So basically at the beginning we've got the title, and we've got the names and everybody's details like org ID and OSF. And then here we've got all the basic transparency stuff is now quite common for open science stuff. So conflict of interest, disclosures, authorship, and then we've got acknowledgements. And then we've got this contributorship, this taxonomy, which is becoming more and more popular about who did what where. So you have a stage for pre-registration, and then you have stuff for who did the formal analysis and who did the supervision, who got the funding, and so forth. And then I'm going to come back to this later. This is PCIR related, so this is about peer communities. So I'm going to skip this for now. This is awesome. And then it's just like a typical abstract. So I have these comments from my students about what to do in what stage. So for example, in stage 1, we have this very important disclosure, explanation, clarification, that everything in the abstract, the method, and the results were written using randomized data. So they're not real data. So sometimes we publish, let's say on ResearchGate, we published our stage 1, and we do replications with some of the original authors. It's like, what do you mean it doesn't replicate? How can it be? I've seen this a million times. Like, hold on, this is all simulated data. We haven't run this yet. This is a stage 1. And this important note is, and the reason why it's in red, is because some people, even when they go through this, they kind of tend to. So it's a little bit confusing when the stage 1 looks like a manuscript. Sometimes just people look at this and they get really worried because it doesn't have any results in it. So you can see here that I basically explain things about the phenomenon and then what are the analyses that we conducted. So in replications, for example, we conducted a replication and extensions of which studies of the target article. And then also in red, the following findings are concluded from simulated random noise. So for example, we found or failed to find support. So in the case of simulated data, it's always going to be we failed to find support for the effects. And finally, we conclude, and then having all the materials, the data in the code. So everything that I do is always shared on the OSF. So this will have the OSF link. And if this is endorsed by, I'll show you one example later, but if it's finally endorsed, then when we submit this to a journal publication, then we want them to know that this has been endorsed by the community, so we add the link over here. So this is the abstract. Then we've got the typical title, we've got the background, what we conducted, how we do this, what is the phenomenon. Then I include a bunch of things on how to explain replications and why replications are done, because this is a big focus for us in our team. But you can also use this for whatever it is that you want in your introductions, including the hypotheses and the findings. So typically we include a very, very clear table on which study, what scenario, what the hypothesis is, and if this is a replication, then what are the findings of the target article, what did they find and what the effect was. So if we have an effect size, confidence interval, statistics, we just try and have as much information as possible. So if it's a replication, then really doing a full analysis of the target article. Then finally, if we do extensions, and then there's this section at the end of a pre-registration and open science. So what is the link to the pre-registration when this happened? What kind of disclosures do you need to make? So for example, all measures, manipulations, exclusions conducted for this investigation are reported. So now this is, I think, in most of the APA journals and some of the psychological science, JSP and so forth, this is already mandatory. But I've seen many fields where this is not, but this is already included in our template just to make sure that everything is followed. So in the methods, include a very important section of a power and sensitivity analysis, and then we have things about the participants. So where are they from, what country, how did you recruit them, what are their demographics. So we do a lot of things on Cloud Research and Prolific, Cloud Research Connect, and on Amazon Mechanical Turk. So you can see already all the citations. If we use some filters, so for example, if we use Prolific, so what samples did we use, what kind of filters, what kind of options did we select. And then we have a lot of things that are supposed to be reported in stage 2, so we just have them as placeholders. So for example, how much did we pay for the assignment, how long did it take the participants to do that. Then we have some general description of what the samples are. So if this is a replication, then what is the replication compared to the original. Then a lot of things about the design. So what is the design, what did they see, what was run, and so forth. Then we have something that I found to be very useful with my students, because many times, even when you have a procedure, even when there's a lot of text describing it, at the end, there are lots of misunderstandings. Sometimes between me and the students, sometimes between me and the student compared with the editor and the reviewers. Because I think a lot of reviewers either skip the text or find it difficult to process the text. But generally, I feel like tables just summarize everything very easily, so that as a reviewer, you can come into like one page and see everything about the design in one page. So here you can see that generally we put like one IV on the top, so you have different columns for that. Have another IV, and this is where we separate the rows for that. And in each one of the boxes, we include what exactly is the DV. We give this both a title, and then we give the actual scale. So I'll let you see what that looks like when we go over some examples. We also add a bunch of things. So for example, if there's a predictor, or covariate, or a manipulation check, or a comprehension check, or attention check, everything should be in this table. So finally, a reviewer should be able to go into that page and see everything about the study that they need in order to evaluate whether this has been done well. And if there's a scale or a measure, that they'll be able to see exactly what the scale is and understand every possible dimension of your study. There's other things as well. So for example, when I include a Qualtrics, then in procedure, I actually include a link to the preview of the Qualtrics. I don't know why when I'm a reviewer, very few of them do this. Sometimes they include a Qualtrics export, but this is a little bit limited because it doesn't have all the features. I think it's very helpful for reviewers to be able to just go through all the Qualtrics. But we also include the QSF file, which is the exported Qualtrics. We also include the docx and the PDF that shows all the Qualtrics. But the main point is it should be as transparent as possible before you move to the data collection, what the survey is going to look like, so everybody can assess the procedure. Then we describe the procedure. in great detail. Then we talk about the predictors, the covariates. If this is a replication extension, we separate this into different sections. What are the manipulations? So you can see over here on the left, IV1, IV2, all of the measures, what's included. So we try to be as transparent as possible about what are the scales, the lowest, the highest, what is the form of alpha, manipulation checks, comprehension checks. So you'll see it's very, very detailed. So what's nice about this template is that even if you're an undergraduate, second year, and I work with a lot of those, they don't know what a manuscript looks like, and they don't know how to look at examples and start building from that. Having this kind of template just takes them step by step about each and every step that they need to address. Even if there's something that is not relevant for your manuscript, you can just take that out. But at least it makes sure that you don't skip a step that is needed. Deviations is very important when you do replications, and also there's a section in the supplementary about deviations from your pre-registration, so this is a placeholder for stage 2. Then some evaluation, criteria, outliers and exclusions. So you can see it's just a lot of blah blah. You can take my text and use that, or use your own. The way that some people have a worry, if I use this template, isn't this gonna come up as kind of some plagiarism? Somebody's gonna be worried about me duplicating. So basically, what we do in order to address this is that you can see that at the end of the introduction section in the pre-registration, we have this register report was written using this template by that. And when you have this kind of credit and the CC by, then it's no problem at all that you just keep the text that you have from that template. You can keep it as you don't need to start, I don't know, just playing with this just so it's new. We address things like Bayesian analysis, assumption checks, and so forth. Finally, we get to the results. And this is really important because we do want results to be there so that reviewers completely understand what it is that's going to happen. And once again, we have this clarification saying that everything is based on simulated data. So we use all the stuff from our R and our Jamovi. We indicate which package, so we give everything citations. And then we have some text, but then we try to summarize as much as possible about the descriptives and the statistics in tables. So you can see I have some placeholders for my students so they can use different kinds of tables so you can decide which one is relevant for you, if it's experimental or if it's a survey based. So just see what is that works for you. Some of these tables are relevant for replications. And if needed, I also have some suggestions of how to do plots. So for example, for correlational designs, I think in general, GG stats plot has some really nice stuff, but especially when it comes to things like correlation, you can just see how nice this is. So I have some recommendations on how to do these plots for the different analysis, or use that, or use your own, whatever you feel like. And finally, we have the discussion. And there's not a lot of things to write in stage 1 for discussion, which is why please know that the discussion is only to be completed in stage 2. But sometimes already in the peer review of stage 1, some reviewers give us good feedback. So we just add this here, say to be discussed in stage 2, here's the issue that came up from this reviewer. So we just add this over here. But this is just like a template of what a stage 2 might look like. And in terms of the implications or limitations, we have some typical discussions that we have with our reviewers, so you can see if you want to include this or not. But this is an example for possible directions that you might want to include. And finally, conclusion, and then the references. So this is already very, very comprehensive. You can see like 72 pages of examples. This is just the main manuscript. In addition to this, we also have a very comprehensive supplementary. And it's especially important because we do a lot of replications, so we need a detailed analysis of everything that's been done in the target article. So you can see in the manuscript, it's very detailed. So there's an analysis of the target article, all the results, effect size calculations of the target article, and then a very important section is all the power analysis. So we typically include this within our markdown using some packages, or if you use gPower, the screenshot from the gPower or the protocol of gPower, and include this here as a power analysis of what is it that you're going to do. There's some directions that help my students do this, how to handle outliers. This is where you pre-register this in advance. All the materials and the scales that I used. Sometimes you can just refer to the quadrics, so you can see exported quadrics. You don't have to write everything. It's not needed to duplicate things. All the comparisons and deviations, we have a lot of placeholders. So pre-exclusions versus post-exclusions, if you pre-registered, some exclusions, all the deviations from the pre-registration. So this is a placeholder for stage 2. And then a bunch of things regarding, let's say, how the study was run. So all this is to be completed by stage 2. But at least you can show the reviewers that in your supplementary, you're already ready to disclose a lot of things to increase the transparency of your research. And then finally, when somebody follows when it's published, and on that, you have a very detailed pre-registration to make sure that they can understand your research well, that they can assess this, evaluate this well. So everything is about as much transparency, as much sharing as possible. So you're welcome to use these templates if you want. I'll just say that this is not the only template that we have. So I created a lot of templates for my students. So whatever is on your mind, we probably have a guide for that. So I mentioned a little bit about like the templates in Jamovi. So if you want a lot about Jamovi or JASP, how to use those, all the tools available from courses to books, you can go and use our Jamovi JASP guide. If you're not familiar with R Markdown, you want to know more about this, we have on that. The special one that I want to show you of all these resources are this one. It's called the Collaborative Effect Size and Confidence Interval. Actually, I started this with my students at the University of Hong Kong. So Chinyu and Kit worked with me on it because honestly, even for me, I did not realize just how many effect sizes there are. Even just like for Cohen's D, like 10 different styles for Cohen's D, which could lead to different kind of numbers. So for each type of design, what kind of effect size do you need? What are some of the benchmarks and how do people think about those? So I didn't even have a good understanding of, I don't know, Cohen's D of 0.8. It's strong, not strong, how should I think about this? What can I compare this to? So after I did this with Chinyu and Kit, then we opened it up for everybody, and you can see the very impressive list of people here. So Matthew here is actually the advisor for Psychological Bulletin, so he's the one who looks at the statistics of all the meta-analyses that are submitted to Psychological Bulletin. Blair Johnson here is the editor of Psychological Bulletin, so you've got some stat experts and people who did some of the packages like Easy Stats. So Natan Ben Shachar is here. So a lot of people who really know their stuff above and beyond what I know, definitely above and beyond what Chinyu and Kit know. So above all of our knowledge, we're able to create this very nice collaborative research. So when my students don't know how to do one of the analysis, how to calculate an effect size, I send them to this guide, and this guide has everything with our code that you can just copy and paste into your power analysis and whatever it is that you're doing for your research. So this is just like one of the many books that we've created. So now I'll just give you an example from one of the recent ones that we've concluded. I'll just tell you how you can find our projects. So I'll just tell you, we're not going to go into this right now, but we conduct most of our registered reports using the peer community. So I'll explain what peer community is at the end, but this is their website. And here I can just search for all the stuff that has been done with me. So Feldman. You can see that the last one that we got in the 25th of September is this one I'm showing you right now. So it's this, so it's this one here, and it's one that I've done with Manix. So Manix is an undergraduate thesis student. He already graduated and did this last year. And you can see that we have two stages, a stage 1 and a stage 2. They look very, very similarly, but you'll see that they point into different URLs. So here's the URL to stage 1, and this is the in-principle acceptance. This is the recommendation. And in that recommendation, you can already see some of the peer review. You can see how we've addressed everything. So when you go and you open our OSF folder, you'll see that in the stage 1, we've shared all the material. So this is the Qualtrics. You have all of our simulated data and analysis. You have the submission for how we submitted this as a registered report. But you also have what were the reviews and how we addressed these reviews in round 1 and in round 2. Finally, when we proceeded, got the in-principle acceptance and proceeded. So this came, all this here, the recommendation of stage 1 happened after all these 3 rounds of stage 1 over here on the right. And you can see that automatically peer community in registered reports registered without me. It was done by somebody else. Registered for us a pre-registration. So this is on OSF. This is a timestamp, and you can see when this timestamp is. And then I also went in addition to that and also froze and pre-registered everything that was on this folder. So it's forever known, nobody can touch this, what happened during the peer review. So we have 2 pre-registrations, one done by the peer community or by the journal, and the second that I did by myself in order to ensure that everything is frozen and included in the project. So once we had this in-principle acceptance, then I went on to collect the data. So the real data in the code you can see over here under the peer community stage 2. You've got the final questionnaire and the projects that we had, and then you can see the 1 round that we had in stage 2 that was trying to ensure that we adhered to everything that we pre-registered in stage 1. So here you can see already stage 2 received a recommendation. So this is an endorsement by the community for this to be published with any of the supportive journals. So this is a publication. What you can see here is that you can see who gave the recommendation. So in this case it was your name. And you can also see who the reviewers were. So Amanda and Jonathan were our reviewers. Here you can see that we had 3 versions. So this is version 1, version 2, version 3. So this is the one that was accepted, version 3. And finally the one that was endorsed is version 5 because we have 2 more rounds in stage 2. So finally, what's nice about this is that you have full transparency about everything that took place in this process. Now, the thing I wanted to show you, let me just check. Yeah, it's this. So this is what it looks like. Now I'm opening the the page. So this is for the stage 1. Sorry, this is the stage 2. This is the stage 1. And in the stage 1, you can see it links to the stage 2. It has a recommendation where it explains what it is that we've done. It explains also which journals we can publish this in. And then it has everything, our reply, the track changes, all the reviews that we received from both Amanda and from the other reviewers. So you can even see the dates, you can download the review, and then you can see how we replied to each and every one of those. Yeah, to show you a little bit of what, so this is the stage 2. This is the stage 1, I think. Yeah, this is version 3, all right? So version 3, just to so you can compare this to the template, what it looks like for stage 1 to be complete. So you see that everything is already filled up. We have this important clarification here. And we explain that we're going to run this on cloud research with participants on Amazon Mechanical Turk using cloud research. And then we have the following findings are based on simulated data, and then we have some placeholders, and then we have the manuscript. Once again, we clarify that everything here is simulated. The introduction just looks like the final introduction. And there's actually not a lot that we changed, if at all, in the introduction. So it has everything. It has a theory, it has a hypothesis. You can see that everything is very well detailed. So we have all the exercises from the original. And we include hypothesis with the label, which studies are involved in the description, so it's very clear what it is that we set out to do. We also have this, where did we share all of our data. Here you can see that we still don't have the links for the IPA, because this is the stage 1. And then here you can see how we determined the power, so what was the way that we determined to run 1400, based on what kind of an effect. So we used the SESOI, smallest effect size of interest, as a coherence D of 0.2, and then we multiplied this, and then we did a bunch of other things. And you can see our comparison to the original to try and understand the difference. So everything is just laid out very, very clearly. What were the vignettes? How were they done? What was done in each one of the measures? So going down, seeing everything, transparent and all those. And the thing I wanted to show you, and the most I guess interesting, is that we include a results section, and the results section just states what the results were based on the simulated data. So you can see, of course, all the p-values are not significant, and you can see the plots that we included in advance. So the reviewers knew exactly what each figure is going to be like, what each text is going to be like. And then finally, when we got the in principle acceptance, we conducted the data analysis and we ran this. When we submitted the stage 2, you can see, you can just put the two manuscripts, stage 1, stage 2 next to each other, and do a track changes. And then you can already see all the things that changed. So actually, in the abstract, you can see we removed this clarification. And you can see that in stage 2, we updated all of the numbers to the real numbers. You can see that the introduction is pretty much the same. We had some minor citation updates. I think that was the only thing here. Maybe some spelling that we found. But basically, almost everything about this was exactly the same. This is also the same. Yeah, we updated the links. So you can see now the links in the stage 2. In the method, we updated a few things about clarifications that we needed about what we did after data collection. Updated a few numbers. We removed the clarification. So what's nice about this is that as a reviewer, I don't even need this AI tool reg check. You can just see two documents comparing to each other. What were the deviations? What exactly happened? So when you're stage 1, when your pre-registration is the manuscript, and it's very easy to follow what happened between this and the actual final results after the data was collected. And looking at the results, you'll see that the results are very similar. It's actually the same text. The only thing that changed is from failed to find, because this was simulated data. We found support, and we updated the numbers. So now everything is very, very easy to evaluate. And you can see how the figures shifted from the simulated data where you see no effect to what happened finally at the end. So you see very small changes. The only changes that are there about the data and the statistics. And this just makes it a lot easier. And finally, when we get to the discussion, yeah, so the tables are updated with all the stats and all that. So you can see it's very, very detailed. And then we have some post hoc and exploratory analysis. So this does not show up in the stage 1. So what is it that we did in order to ensure that everything is okay and we have positive controls and some of the things that the reviewers asked us to do? And then we just added the discussion. It's a very long discussion that addresses everything that we made. So that's what's nice about registry reports. So if you do this well, if you follow the template, if you include everything just like a manuscript in your stage 1, then you're able to very easily compare your stage 1 to your stage 2, and the reviewer's job is very, very straightforward. If you don't have, let's say you're writing your stage 1 and there's something that you don't understand, or you're not sure how the reviewers are going to react, I'm very happy to tell the reviewers, actually, reviewers, we debated this, and we don't know what the best thing is. What we decided to do for stage 1 is this, but if you have a different advice, or you think we should do differently, please, reviewers, give us some feedback on this. So that's what's nice about a registry report. You can really involve your editor and your reviewers, and if there's something that you don't know how to make a decision on, just ask them what they think is the best way to go ahead for that. All right, so now we go to the more practical side, like which journals actually support this kind of thing. So the history of this is that it started in Cortex on the journals that Chris Chambers did, but it really grew up, and now by 2024, we have more than 350 different journals. Which journals have these registered reports? So you have a link here that you can press in order to see which ones are supported. I am not sure this is updated, but this is the most updated that I've seen. And I think after 380, they stopped keeping track of this because they realized this has become mainstream. But if you want to have some basic understanding of what's in your field, you can select your scientific discipline here. Or if you want to know, do they support a registered report of replications, you can add these here. Or how many of those do a registered report for meta-analysis or for qualitative research. If you care about APCs, if this is a problem for you, if you care about word limits. So you just have a bunch of different ways to address this. So for example, I do a lot of things in psychology. So I can just select this psychology only. I can go for replication studies and then say I mostly conduct replications. So I can go for this. The answer is yes. And then I have a long list of journals in psychology that right now support registered reports for doing replications. Some of them are some of our top journals. So even Journal of Personality and Social Psychology now does registered reports because of a new editorial board that came in. So this is exciting times. Not that we've struggled for over a decade to convince journals, so now we've got open science editors. If you're aiming for something a bit more ambitious or large scale, you've got even Nature, Human Behavior, and so forth. You've got basically a big range. So psychology is a little bit privileged. It's going to be a little bit more difficult with some of the other disciplines, but it's increasing. So I can see, I don't know, you have this communication, linguistics, nutrition is coming up. So you have a bunch of others, and I feel like many of them also endorse this in some kind of with special issues. So you can find some of this from the Center of Open Science platform. In addition, if you ask, okay, so I have a bunch of journals in psychology that do registered reports, which one should I go for? Which one does it the best? So now we actually have a community feedback platform, so I'll open this and I'll show you what that looks like. So here you have, let's go for the dashboards. You can share your own experience, so whatever it is that you experience with different journals. Some of those are very well known, so we've done with collaborative psychology, we've done things with PCIRR. So you can see feedback, and there's already quite a bit of feedback here. So 643, wow, with Cortex, yeah, of course it's Chris Chambers, so that makes sense. So you can go and have an evaluation. So for example, if you really care about speed, which one is the highest? So you've got BMC Medicine or you've got Peer Community that are very speedy because of a feature I'm going to talk about that's called scheduled review. And then you can just dig in and see what is it exactly that they include and what are the feedback. So if you care about speed, you can see the different indicators and the quality, different indicators and what people are saying, the kind of feedback that they're giving. So I love this platform because we actually don't aggregate these things. We don't keep track of these with our journals and we don't give them feedback, but they are doing this for registered reports. I really appreciate what the Chris Chambers team and the Center of Open Science are trying to do in order to get people to endorse this a bit more. And I can vouch, at least from my perspective, the peer community in registered reports is really high up there. So 92 people say that the speed is very high, and 704 say that the quality is very high. So that's very encouraging. I can say from my personal experience, like this is really the case with them. I can see there's a question. You have an experience when after stage 1, when your reviewer suggested something unattainable and feasible to you, how do you deal with this? Just talker might be stuck because of that. Yeah. So I think it is on the editor. A good editor will not even relay this question, or he will say, okay, the reviewer said this, but I'm overriding this because this is not related to registered reports. I can tell you a few times this happened to us with Chris Chambers. So people raised some stuff in stage 2, and Chris Chambers are like, no, stage 2 now. Stage 1 is where you ask these kinds of questions, not right now. So he overruled this. But I've heard of cases where people suddenly raised all kinds of new issues in stage 2, and I really think it's very, very important that you push back on this. And I can already tell you that some of the editors who did not overrule this, sometimes it was helpful to communicate to people who understand registered reports like Chris Chambers, just forwarding your decision letter to them saying, you see the kind of comment that I got on a registered report, I think this is a misunderstanding, would you be willing to talk to the editor? And I've seen Chris Chambers intervene a few times in order to make sure that the editors know how registered reports work and what should not happen. So if something like this is happening to you, one step that you can do is talk to your editor. I think it's already over there. If it has not been overruled in the decision letter, I feel like the editor will tell you to either ignore this or to acknowledge this and just say that you received a waiver from the editor for doing this. If the editor is not willing, then sometimes it helps to communicate these things outside of the community in order to involve somebody who's a bit more senior and with some kind of experience. And I would also suggest when possible, and this is why open peer review is very, very important, that if you go for some of the open peer review platforms, so Collabora has open peer review, International Review of Social Psychology has open peer review, peer community and registered reports have open peer review. So if something was raised that was not according to plan, this will show up in the open peer review so that you can demonstrate to everybody what went on over there. So even if at some point you got rejected, let's say that somehow, because of this issue, you got rejected in one journal, then you can basically just move this as is to a different journal, just saying, you see, we got rejected because of this unreasonable thing. But actually, this also happened to us. And Chris Chambers was willing to just take reviews from a different journal and immediately give in principle acceptance and endorsement of publication with a journal like Royal Society of Open Science. So if you don't get this from your own journal in the process that you went through with your editor, worst case scenario, you can always take things as is and with no additional peer review, just share this with a community that understands registry reports and that will help you to overcome. But definitely there's no reason to become stuck on this. Definitely never need to send this back to your file. Even if you get rejected, which is very rare in stage 2, even if you get rejected, you should be able to automatically transform this to a different journal that understands registry reports. I hope that kind of clarifies that question. Yeah, one thing that I should say is that one thing that I like about peer community and registry reports is that all the editors over there go through open science and registry report training. So they know not to do this kind of thing. And not only this, but happened to us a few times that some of the editors in peer community gave us comments that were not reasonable, and then the managerial board, like Chris Chambers, overruled them and added a comment, this is not PCI or our way. So they go over, so the managing team of peer community go over the decision letters of the editors in peer community, and then they say, this is not peer community, so you do not need to adhere to this, and they write automatically without you. They write to the editor saying, this is not how we do things in peer community. This is another reason why I really love peer community. And as we'll talk about this very soon, peer community also allows you to just take the endorsed manuscript from peer community and publish this with any of the journals that you like. All right. Okay, so we'll go back to the presentation. Okay, so I think it's very obvious what the advantages are for science. So you remove publication bias, everything is just like better rigor, better transparency. But one of the questions that comes in is, why is it good for you? Why as an early career researcher you would like to risk your career on something like this? And I think we've got a lot of feedback by now saying that this is very important for early career researchers. Actually, it offers a lot of benefits that I think a lot of the early career researchers see all the downsides, very few in my opinion, but don't think about the amazing things that this can give you. So when you do a registered report, it just takes away all the stress in terms of, am I going to get a p-value lower than 0.05 or not? Is it going to be supported or not? All these things are just like not relevant anymore. So instead of focusing on what are the amazing results going to be or the stress over there, you just focus on doing solid, rigorous work. Then, especially if you're an early career researcher, but also me, I've been assistant professor for 6 years, I still feel like I don't know a lot of things. Even though I'm an expert and stuff, I can always learn new things, and I have my own biases and weaknesses. So what's nice about this is, with our registered report, you submit a plan, and if you have some mistakes or something doesn't make sense over there, then the reviewers will tell you. So you can get expert peer review when it's still useful, and you can still change some of that. So the reviews that we've got for registered reports were a lot more constructive, positive, and have helped us to the point of me sometimes just wanting to give the reviewers authorship. It's not possible, but I can definitely credit them, I can mention them, and if they do the review in the open peer review journal, then they also get a DOI citation to their peer review that they can add on their CV. A big issue is that I've spent most of my PhD life submitting to the highest impact factor, then the second lowest, and the third lowest, the fourth lowest. Just such a waste of time, because the acceptance rates of all these journals are very, very high, and the likelihood of me as an early career researcher, especially from where I am in the University of Hong Kong, the other side of the world, there's a lot of biases involved in me not getting through the system. Even in journals like Cortex that have these high rejection rates, when they do registered reports, Chris Chambers reports that the rejection rates drop to about 10%. 10% for stage 1 and 0 rejection for stage 2. So we do a lot of replications. I can say that before we moved to registered reports, we had a rejection rate of about 70 to 80% on average. So very frustrating, very time consuming, and I'm not sure what the added value of this was. But since we moved to registered reports, our rejection rates overall at the end, finally, when it comes to all our submissions, is 0. One time we got rejected for registered reports, but as I indicated, Chris Chambers stepped in and said immediately, oh, we will give an in-principle acceptance at Royal Society of Open Science. So it was transferred from one journal to another. So we have not been rejected as a registered report yet, which is very unusual and very heartwarming work for me and the students. Some people worry about time, so I'm going to show you a way by which I am able to do the registered reports with my students in a 6 to 8 months time frame. And another important thing is that once you get the in-principle acceptance, then you can already add this to your CV, because this is a guaranteed publication. You cannot do this when, if you have just a plan or something, but because it has been peer-reviewed, because it's an in-principle acceptance, then you can already add this to your CV, and it's a lot more powerful than just having a prequel or some kind of an idea. Finally, a lot of early career researchers don't have their own funding, so they depend on people who have some funds. We don't have anything. Like, all of my resources, all of my funding is able to get funding from the teaching folks in my university to support all of my projects with the students. But just a lot of benefits for everybody. In addition, the reviewers are just a lot more engaged, or a lot more positive, and they contribute a lot more meaningfully. So not just me saying this, but all over X, Twitter, people are saying. Conclusion from Chris Chambers about the past, the present, the future of registered reports. I suggest that if you care about registered reports, that you go and read this. I like this, that they have a whole table, very long, about the misconceptions and the realities of registered reports. So people have some misconceptions that registered reports don't allow for exploratory research. So definitely not the case. The only thing that this requires you is that if you do exploratory research, just like I show you with Mannix, at the end you'll have a section clearly labeled as post hoc and exploratory. So explore away as much as possible. Just please label this accordingly. It does not limit creativity or anything like that. If anything, it adds to it, because by sharing your presentation, many times we submitted this to peer review, and suddenly the reviewer said, actually, this is a lot more interesting than what you wrote. If you run this kind of analysis, you can actually find something more than that. So if anything, crowdsourcing this kind of thing is kind of enables more creativity and more feedback for you to find more things. You can do more than just a single study, so you can do a programmatic registered reports. Anything else that's in here? Yeah, so definitely suitable. For example, how to reach samples. Some people are saying this is not suitable. Definitely even more suitable. Like, a lot in my department are neuroscientists, or do things with babies, or do things with a special population. If anything, this is better, because if you have an in-principle acceptance for stage 1, then you can go on Twitter or your mailing list and say, I don't have access to this population, but I have a really good pre-registration with a plan on how to do this, and they received an in-principle acceptance. Who wants to join me? And then finally, as a community comes together, you can get access to populations that you could not have before, just because you already went through the peer review. That's suitable for early career researchers. I think this is like a big misconception. I think this is the most suitable for early career researchers. Just to give you an example, the first registered report that I ever did is with somebody in Vienna called Chinyu Shao. He's the first that agreed to do a registered report with me, and we did this with a journal called Comprehensive Results in Social Psychology, and he was able to do this in less than 1 year. And here you can see a replication of 2 studies, the decoy effect. And I asked Chinyu, can you please tell me, as an MPhil student, can you please share your insights about how was it for you as an early career researcher? Notice he wrote a lot. I'm going to try and summarize this for you. You can later look at this if you want to. But this is what he said. Reduces uncertainty. So as an MPhil student, first, you don't have a lot of time. Second of all, you don't know whether what you are doing is any good. So it reduces uncertainty about the process. You know exactly what the process is going to be like. More confidence in what it is that you're doing. Catch errors. So the reviewers did give us some really good feedback. It gives you peace of mind, and it ends up saving time rather than taking more time. And he also added that the reviewers contributed meaningfully. We got a lot of really good feedback from it. And he recommends this especially for MPhil, research postgraduate, and early career researchers. So this is coming from an early career researcher, not just me working with an early career researcher. So this is kind of sums up like a second hour. So the hour I'm going to spend on peer community and registered reports. Before I move on, any questions or things you want to ask about the content so far? Something on your mind, or something about your specific case that you want to talk about?
I think just like an experience from my side, which really spoke to me by this quotation from Xinyu with the peace of mind. Just this trick with simulating data from Qualtrics. We caught a huge mistake last year, where we forgot one of the dependent measures in the master thesis. And then we did the analysis with the simulated data, and I asked the student, like, yeah, can you now include this measure? And she was like, where is it? And then we figured we don't have it. So this really saved, I think, 4,000 euros. That was extremely helpful.
Yeah, for me as well. Actually, I realized that if I don't see the simulated data in the canned code, I don't really understand what the thesis student is trying to do. just saying I'm going to run in ANOVA, there's so many ways to run in ANOVA. I'm just going to run a regression, so many ways to run it. By doing this, you know exactly each step of the way, and then you also ensure that your server is correct and that you've got all your key variables and that you understand what package does what thing and what kind of output. How you're going to present this to reviewers. So just eliminates so many of the problems that I had working with students. And I really wish as a student that I had this back then when I was working with my supervisor. So I think a lot of supervisors just give up on trying to understand what's happening with the students and they give blind trust. I know this happened with my supervisor, so hands-off. It says, you do stuff. And this really allows the students, the team, the supervisors, and then finally the reviewers and editors to just know everything about every aspect of the project. Great. So it seems like we don't have questions, so I'll just proceed. We don't have a lot left, so we're close to the end. This is more like procedural stuff about peer community. So talking about the challenges, there are some challenges, and we need to discuss these challenges. It's very frustrating for me as a researcher, as an academic, about some of these things. So one frustration that prevented me from doing registry reports for a long time, like I described with Chinio, is I was under a lot of time pressure. So if we have an MPhil of 1 year, or I get undergraduates and master students for 6 to 8 months, how can I do an entire science project together with them in such a short time? In addition, because registry reports are tied to journals, just like the point that was raised here, it could be that some editors are not very well trained or experienced with registry reports, and the evaluations vary, and there's no way to really. So now we've got quick changes to help with things that don't work out. But what do we do about all these different journals? And it's a shame to get a rejection from a specific journal and having to go and restart everything with a different journal. So big problem. Another problem is that we've got this model where we sold ourselves, and we sold our IP, and we sold everything that we do to for-profit publishers. We pursue these prestige impact factors, which is why we aim to go to all these Elsevier and Springer Nature and Wiley and all those. So we give them everything, and then they take our work and they put this behind a paywall, and then we can't access this, the public can't access this. Just everything about this just seems very, very wrong. And there's no reason for this. Like, we don't need these for-profit publishers. We can do everything on our own. We've been able to do this for quite a long time. So there's no reason for these journals to exist. They don't add anything that I know of to the process. And their profit margins are just absolutely insane. So we can just eliminate them altogether. I consider them to be parasites. Are just like they've been there, they work on prestige, and we should just eliminate this altogether. Another problem that we have is that we have no understanding of what happens underneath, because we never share the data in the code. Even worse than this, we don't exactly know what happens with the peer review process. So you pay my salary, but you don't get access to my work, or peer review that is closed. You have a vaccine, let's say during the COVID pandemic, a vaccine comes out and it says it was peer reviewed. Reviewed by who? What was the feedback? Did they follow up on this feedback? Finally, one editor decided this is going to get published based on what criteria? How was this evaluated throughout to reach to that criteria? We don't know anything about this, and the public and the scientific community cannot assess any of the credibility. So one of the things that I do as a reviewer, I always want to see the data and the code and the materials. And sometimes when I request these, they say, okay, thank you, so we don't need your services anymore. We're going to find a reviewer that doesn't want access to this. So all these things just seem very wrong to me. I don't understand any of these. And when I came into the PhD doing to do science, realizing that this is how we do science was very disappointing to me. So I was looking for a way for something a little bit different. Plus, what this causes is this gaming of the system, so it takes a very long time to publish, and then we start from one day, we move to another, and then if finally it's published, it takes 3-4 years, or it's just thrown out. So my claim here is that peer community in registry reports is the most promising direction. This, for me, is the future of science. So this is registry reports 2.0. It's meant to address a lot of the issues that we had with registry reports. And I remember 2019, I think it was, we did an open science workshop in Padova, and I was asking Chris Chambers, so how do I address things like the time? How do I address the problems with the journals? How do we solve these things? And Chris Chambers told me to wait. And it took a bit of time because of the pandemic, but in 2021, peer community came out, and I can say that this is a complete revolution of the way science is done. And since then, everything that I do with students has been submitted to peer community in registry reports, and I'm very enthusiastic about everything there. So what is peer community in? Peer community in is a platform. Peer community in registry reports is one of the communities, but you've got peer community in animal research. I think yesterday was announced in nutrition. You've got all kinds of different domains, motivation, movement, I don't know. You can just go on their website and see just how many of these. Peer community in registry reports is one of them. What's nice about this platform is that the way that they work is that they evaluate preprints. So you upload your work as a preprint, publicly available preprint, on one of the platforms, let's say Open Science Framework, and then evaluations are done by the community, for the community, with experts recruited to review the peer review. And then the evaluations are tied to that preprint, to your preprint together. So what's interesting about this is that there's no for-profit publisher involved. Everything is done by the academics, for the academics, with no publisher involved whatsoever. The big revolution about this, and the thing that I think will help eliminate at the end, in 20 years or so, will help eliminate some of these for-profit publishers, is that at the end, when you have an endorsement by peer community in, you can decide which one of the supportive journals you want to go with. So you have the ability to choose the journal after you receive endorsement, and they guarantee to automatically publish this with no additional peer review. So I'll show you exactly what that looks like. But to emphasize again, it's absolutely free for everybody, the authors, the readers. Everything works on preprints. Everything is done by the community and for the community, and it eliminates the need for one specific journal. After the community, you can just go for whatever journal you feel works best for you. So to show you what this looks like, these are the main contributions. So here we've got traditional registry reports. So you see these two checks. It does offer pre-registration peer review, and it does give you an in-principle acceptance, which is great. But then there's all these other benefits that only happen with peer community. So for example, one of the big things that allowed me to do the thesis students as a registry report is that they have scheduled reviews. So if you schedule something with a snapshot 6 weeks in advance, then you can work during these 6 weeks. They go and recruit during these 6 weeks, they recruit reviewers. And the reviewers are obligated, they say, that starting from the date 6 weeks into the future, they're going to review this within 1 week, then the editor takes another week. So finally, within 2 weeks, you get a peer review. What is this snapshot? The snapshot is basically less than 1 page that details your research question, your hypotheses, and the very broad planned way that you're going to assess this, so the analysis that you're going to run with a few citations. So the snapshot is just to allow the reviewers to get an understanding of whether they want to sign up for this. At the beginning, when Chris described this thing to me, I thought too good to be true. But now that we've done 30 of these, I can say that they've delivered every time. It's just unbelievable that this happens. I don't know why this innovation doesn't happen anywhere else, but this is a big thing with peer community. I think that when peer community in psychology happens, it was supposed to happen this month, or probably in a month or two, we're going to have something very, very similar. So that's a big boost. So with this, I can do within 6 to 8 months, I can do a thesis as a registry report. So you don't need to commit to a journal. After we get endorsement from the community, we decide which journal we want to go in. And then another important thing is that you have open citable peer review. So you can assess, just like I showed you before with Manix, you can see who are their reviewers and what kind of review they had. So if you are the reviewer, you can add on your CV the DOI of the thing that you contributed. And you can say, I actually contributed to this work. So it's good for the reviewers. It's good for the authors. For me especially, because I run Replications, many times we got this anonymized, so-called anonymized reviews, typically by the target article original authors, and we're very, very hostile. I want these things to be public, and using this platform, you can request the reviews to be identifiable, and then the reviewers can decide if they want to do this or not do this. So I can give a whole lecture about why I think open peer review and identifiable peer review is good and actually helps editorial researchers and helps science rather than creates all kinds of things. But that's why a different lecture. So a lot of different benefits. This is how Snapshot is done. What are these journals? Who are these journals that are willing to do this kind of thing? So this is the list from the beginning of the year. It might have updated throughout the year. I keep seeing Twitter Blue Sky posts saying that more and more journals are joining. But take, for example, Cortex. So if you think Cortex is a good journal for you as a neuroscientist, I would generally say do everything through the community as registry report. Once you get this, you can take this as is to Cortex, and Cortex will publish this with no additional peer review. So that's already incredible. We've done this with a number of those. So collaborative psychology is reputable, I think, across the domains of psychology. In social psychology, we've got International Review of Social Psychology that joined fairly recently. Meta-psychology still doesn't have an impact factor, but I'm confident that once it gets its impact factor, it will be quite substantial. The thing that I mentioned about Royal Society development science, I think consumers is also over there, so we all kinds of things. So you've already got a good list of journals, at least within the domain of psychology. Now, in addition to these journals that automatically will publish with no additional peer review, you've got here peer community interested journals. And here you've got even bigger names. So for example, Nature Human Behavior. You've got the Journal of Experimental Psychology, Learning and Recognition. So if you like these kinds of journals, one thing that you can do, you can contact the editors and say, I want to do a registry report, but I want to make sure that it meets your criteria. If I do this through peer community, would you be willing to publish this? And it's very possible, and it happened to us already in the past, the journals will say yes. In addition, before Collabora was here on the left in the friendly, they were interested. So Samin Vazir, who is now the editor of Psychological Science, was previously the editor of Collabora Psychology. And these editors on the right side receive notifications for every stage 1 manuscript that you have. So we started to put out a lot of these in principle acceptance stage 1. So it was unbelievable. It never happened to me in my life before. But Samin Vazir would contact me and say, we really like this manuscript. Would you consider publishing with Collabora? I'm like, yeah, I would love to publish with Collabora. Only one problem. Collabora has an APC to waive for open access of $1,000, which I don't have the money to pay. And then it seems like Collabora was willing to waive this. So we've never paid APCs for Collabora, and we've published, I think, 10 different manuscripts with Collabora. So when you have the power and when you have the choice, the journals are the ones that want your manuscript rather than the opposite. So if Collabora is not willing, I will go to one of the other ones, one of the other journals that is willing. In addition to 2 of these things, one thing that you can do is you can take your endorsed manuscript and you can send this to the journal that you originally wanted to go through with. So, for example, I saw on Twitter that the editor of Cognition and Emotion was willing to try registered reports, was a little bit hesitant because he doesn't know how to evaluate these things. So I told him, you can actually use the endorsement from peer community. Do you want to try with one of ours? So we took our manuscript that was endorsed and we submitted this to Cognition and Emotion. Only the editors went through this, and after one round, they accepted this. So now it's published with Cognition and Emotion. So not necessarily only the journals listed here, but also journals beyond. Also happy to be the journals that are not listed here contacted me and said, would you consider submitting this to us? So a real revolution. It gives all the power to the authors rather than to the for-profit publishers. In addition, you have something called level of control. So some people say, can I do a registered report for existing data? Or if I need to run the data collection before I get the in-principle acceptance, what then? So this is where peer community and registered reports offers levels of control. So you can see what the level is. So actually the highest level of control is that the data has not been collected yet, so data does not exist. But if it already exists prior to IPA, then you lower it to level 5. If you've already looked at the data and accessed the data, it goes down to level 4 or level 3. We conducted one meta-analysis in peer community and registered reports. So peer community said, meta-analysis, all the data already exists, and because you published in this domain, you know this domain, so you have some understanding. So they lowered our level of control from 6 to 2. For me, still beneficial. The data does not exist. There is no data set. I still need to go and call for all published and unpublished findings, and I need to do a systematic review. I need to curate this data, but because the data already exists out there, the level of control is adjusted from 6 to 2. I don't know any other journal that does this kind of thing, but it just means that you can even do registered reports on stuff that already exists, even stuff that you've already accessed, if you adjust the level of control and you're fully transparent about how and when you did this. So that's another thing for you to check. In addition, you might ask, how do I find, so I do this with all of my thesis students, how do I fund this kind of thing? So I was able to convince the university. I asked them, if I show you an in-principle acceptance by a student, an undergraduate student or a master's student, from a journal, would you be willing to fund this? And they said yes. For 30 students, we'll give $1,000, which is quite good for a data collection on Prolific or Amazon Mechanical Turk cloud research, for short studies like the ones that we do. So we do typically vignettes or very short scales. So you can run a very well-powered sample with this. So 30 students, if you do in-principle acceptance, and then you'll get this, and you'll see that we were able to fund a lot of thesis students through this. So I would generally say that after 30 of these, this is a very successful proof of concept. If I can do this with my undergraduates and top masters, then definitely anybody else can. So what does this look like? A little bit like Manix's. So Manix did this as a peer community, but also Kirk and Timothy. This is what Kirk's looks like, so very similar to Manix's that I showed you before. You can see everything here on the OSF. This is the recommendation of peer community in stage 2. And I just want to show you that it has been converted into Collabora. So Collabora reached out to us after stage 1 and said, if you get a stage 2 endorsement, we would like to publish this. And then I said, please waive the APC, and they waived the APC, and then Kirk got this published in Collabora Psychology. So it just goes to show that if you go through this entire process, then you're able to reach that publication. And you can, just like we did with Manix, you can see we had 1 round here, 2 rounds in stage 2, just to clarify a few final details. And it was a very brief, I think it was one of our fastest, I think 6 months, 7 months from first preprint to a final publication with Collabora. So that's amazing. And finally, Timothy, actually an undergraduate student that did 2 projects with me in peer community and registered reports, because we have a Psychology Today column, so you can see him, what it is that he wrote about his experience. And just like Chinyu, he summarizes this as being the best learning experience for researchers, and for him as an undergraduate student, just fresh out of undergraduate with 2 publications through peer review is amazing. And he also gave a brown bag, so if you want to see him present his research. So he does a very good job here. And finally, just I think yesterday, finally published online for Cognition and Emotion, which is not a PCIRR journal. So it's very possible for you to move from peer community to a journal like Cognition and Emotion. One of the things I wanted you to see is that in the final paper, the abstract in Cognition and Emotion has this in the abstract. This registry report has been endorsed by peer community in registry reports, and linking to the registry report endorsement by peer community. So that's how you tie the community endorsement to the publication in the journal that you prefer. How do I do this with the students, and how do I get this done so fast? Very simple. First we start, because everything we do is a replication and extension, we start from doing a Qualtrics survey. They need to set this up as similar to what they've identified in the target article. I give some feedback, then we generate a data set from the survey, and then based on this, they write the full introduction, the methods, and the results on the data analysis based on the generated, anonymized, the generated simulated data. And we have the first draft, then we get the peer review from peer community measure report. We do this as a scheduled review, so 6 weeks before we want to submit, we alert them that this is what we want. We do as many stages as we need. And finally, following the IP, because I run everything with Prolific and Cloud Usage, that I can get the data in a day or two, and then they just plug in all of the results. Automatically, all the results section is finished, and then the only thing that's left is just to write the discussion. So you saw very little differences in the introduction, very little differences in the methods. The only thing that really changes are the numbers in the results section, and then adding the discussion. So then finally we submit this to stage 2. Usually it's a breeze. When they can see everything one next to the other, usually the peer review in stage 2 comes in very, very quickly, say, yes, thank you, endorsed. How many of these have we done? We've done a lot. So I've done this with all of my students, so over 30 of these. So you can see the ones that are published if you want to see how it's done. The ones that receive in principle acceptance, we already collected data for all of those. So it's just a matter of within the next 6 months. I hope that all of these will become publications. So we really have a lot of these. We just need to wrap up. All of them have stage 1 in principle acceptance and have already collected data. So it's just a matter of time until all these come up. And all of these are undergraduates, master students. So you can definitely do the same. If you want to see peer community, the level of the manuscripts, and you want to see where it was eventually published, you can press this link and have a look at that. I asked one of the scholars, early career researcher, and I think he's already, an assistant professor, if I'm not mistaken. He graduated from Maastricht University. So I asked him, what is your peer community and registry report experience? So I'll summarize this for you. Learned a lot, pro-open science, a lot of support and feedback from the community, so you don't feel like you're alone. It's very feasible and highly rewarding. And I would say generally for me, if you follow anything that I do on Twitter X or Blue Sky, and you see that I am very enthusiastic about this. So every time we receive these reviews, I'm just so grateful. So I go up and I update people, and after 30 projects, it just seems like a no-brainer. But it's not just me, it's also others with very positive, enthusiastic reviews from some of the people who I consider to be leaders of open science, and the future generation, editors and people of impact are just having very good feedback on peer community. Not everything works, so here's an example of somebody who did not understand replication very well. So I think this was in the earlier stages, 2022 is I think a few months, 6 months after they opened peer community, so I think it was still in the glitchy part, but I think by now Chris Chambers or one of the managerial board might override some of these rejections. But this is to say, this is not perfect, and whatever the criticism is, or whatever it is that they need to improve, they'll be happy to work on this if you communicate this clearly. I'll also add, we do this also not just for replications and extensions, we also do this for meta-analysis. So if you want to see what a registry report meta-analysis is, you're very welcome to use ours. We give examples of simulated data and coding sheets and a lot of code. So if you want to embark on meta-analysis, which is really very low risk for early career researchers, you do not need to find your own data, you do not need to spend money. Meta-analysis is just data out there waiting to be analyzed. If you want to do this with peer community, you have our templates and you can use those. If you need any help, of course, we're happy to help. If you want to know more about peer community, not from me, but from people like Chris Chambers, so we have a lot of links to other talks about this. If you want to see articles about this, there's a few out there, including the one that I talked about, the past, present, and future, by Chris Chambers and Colin. And finally, the only piece of advice I want to conclude with, since we're getting to the end, is that if you're an early career researcher and you're thinking, I want to try this out, I want to do something like what I did with my students with the University of Hong Kong was able to publish, I would urge you to consider doing your project as a replication and extension. So whatever your novelty is, you can build this on top of an existing article. So do one side that is a replication, just repeating what somebody else has done before, and then add your novelty or add your contributions on top of that. There's lots of reasons to do this. I think I have lectures about why replications are important and what is their value and why is this the right thing to do. I just think that replications are so valuable beyond what we typically give it credit for, and allow you to really understand things behind the literature, behind the article. So it allows not only for verification, reproducibility, and replicability, but it also allows you to assess theory and assess the methods. So I give workshops showing just how, with replications, you can improve theory, you can assess methods and improve on methods, you can test generalizability, and reignite an interest in things that have appeared to be lost. Why would you consider doing it this way? I really think that doing replications and extensions reduces risk. So if you do something that's very novel, out of the blue, then you can go wrong. You can have a lot of things that go missing variables is just like the easiest thing about this, but you can go wrong because you don't understand the literature well, you did not understand the phenomenon well. So it's better to build on something that has at least been tested by somebody else. And then if something doesn't work, then you have a good idea of what didn't work. If the replication extension, everything failed, it's not because of your extension, it's because of the replication. If your extension failed but the replication worked, then you already contributed to the community, and then okay, I just need to find a different extension, or I need to test this in a different way. Sometimes it happens to us that the extension worked, but the replication didn't, and then you're just like, okay, so maybe we need to revisit the things that we thought the replication did, and we should focus on what the extension actually found. And if you found both, it's amazing. You contributed both to the assessing the credibility of the original findings, and then you added something novel. It just allows you to decrease cost, make things a lot more measurable, make things systematic, and increase the value and the impact. So it really maximizes the learning in the process. So if you're not sure how to do this or what is the best way to do this, you can either watch some of our videos or contact me, and I'll be able to guide you through this. So how to do this on your own? If you don't want to start from scratch, you can either join us in taking some of the things that we've done, or you can take all the resources and the materials. You don't even need to include us. You can just do your own. So we have, for example, a team in Brazil that is taking all of our replications, translating this to Portuguese and running this in Brazil. And they've been able to get this into Collabora, Micropsychology, and publishing this as well. So we really encourage this, and there's no, you should just cite us, but there's no reason to include us as co-authors. Just say, go ahead, this is what open science is about. Take everything that we've done. And because everything from our teaching materials and everything from our resources and our templates and our guides, everything is open and collaborative, you can join or just take it as is and implement this in your own courses or in your own labs. So the most important message for me is that if there's something about this process that you do not understand, if there's something here that seems scary to you, if there's something here that you're not sure about, then please reach out to me and tell me what it is that I can do in order to help you do better research or do more open science. So tell me what I can do to help you do better. Finally, everything that I covered is on my website. Lots of ways to contact me. This is my email. I'm very active on Blue Sky and Twitter X. We have a mailing list every 2-3 months. We send some updates, projects or things that are available, or you can go and watch stuff on YouTube. Some students are hesitant to contact me. I don't know if the professor hierarchy is don't be. Even if I can't answer because I'm too busy, I'll definitely reply, and I'll connect with some of the other people in my team that might be able to help. But by now, I've worked with over 50 article researchers from around the world. We have a lot of cumulative experience, and I'm sure that whatever your issue is, we'll be able to help you with that. So I'll wrap up with this. Thank you for bearing with me for over 2.5 hours. That's very impressive. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to stay as long as you need in order to address whatever you have in your mind. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was really great and I think very informative, clearing up a lot of potential questions in registered reports.
But I wanted to thank you so much. It was incredibly insightful. I learned so much, and yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I can maybe share a bit of my experience as well, where I would really say that this is, as you said multiple times, really a game changer. I think this helps you to spend more time with tasks which make our job pleasant and interesting, less time with where you feel like you're wasting your time, less rumination about different journals and reformatting stuff. I think this is all gone, and I think the biggest problem of registered reports is then also doing traditional manuscripts, because there I really feel I have no temper anymore for it.
I don't review those anymore. I think the last one was like 2 years ago. Since then, it's only been registered reports.
No.
And most of them will.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, for example, from our professor, she tried it a couple of years back, but like tied to one journal. And in the end, the project just didn't happen because everything took so long, and the PhD student had to progress at some point. I think one of the biggest challenges I'm facing is with money which has to be spent within the year, and then not having the in principle acceptance yet.
Yeah, with peer community, you can actually collect the data. If you already went through one round of review, and it seems like many of the things are minor, then you can talk to your recommender, the editor, in order for you to collect your data before the in-principle acceptance. If you have to collect your data, you can lower the level of control from 6 to, I don't know, 4 or 3. It doesn't mean that you can conduct your registry report. Level of control just makes people a little bit, so you need to be very, very transparent. When did you collect the data? What did you see before the in-principle acceptance, and how did this relate to the peer review process? The only thing that you need to take into consideration is that some journals only publish level of control 6, and not level of control 3 or 4. So if you do this kind of trick, you will just limit a little bit the journals willing to do this. But actually, if you have time constraints, you can address this with adjusting the level of control.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's very helpful, because I have no experience with this, and of course most of what I do is with master's students. We're on a timeline, and money is on a timeline, and everything is on different timelines. So that's definitely a challenge, especially now with the 6 weeks winter holiday, for example.
Yeah, I know. So this 6 weeks winter holiday is like a good time to do the scheduled review. So you do the snapshot at the beginning, and then once it ends, it's just. Or this is where you can, I don't know if they're in time for this, but peer communities in registry reports closes the portal in December. So like end of November, submit this, and by the time you get back from the holiday, you already got your reviews, and you can allow for scheduling and planning.
Our faculty, through this workshop, introduced a registered report award. So for everyone, between everyone who submits a registered report within the next year, I think we will have a lottery of twice 150 euros to support the idea and bring up some more enthusiasm to actually do this. And of course, you get a small award badge, which you can put on your CV.
I hope some people pick up their community after watching this.
Yeah, I think for me, back then when you showed it to me, I think this was really the breakthrough, is just taking away the fear of always making something wrong.